Welcome to The Road. This is a weekly podcast of All Saints Lutheran Church. I'm your host, John Pedersen, and I serve as pastor. Each week, we reflect on faith, life, and navigating the road ahead. The language of journey is common when we think about life. It has its joys and challenges along the way, and we all need a little encouragement and guidance at times to keep us going. There's a word in the Bible, asphalia, which means truth, but it's the same root word we use in English for asphalt, if you can believe that. It's a solid surface that makes travel easier and more assured. And so every week we're going to be exploring elements of faith and life that keep us on the road. Faith isn't about living a perfect life. It's about finding our way, getting through rough spots, but seeking out those great vistas too. You can find my weekly message here, but you'll also find special conversations with guests who have insights on things like wellness, parenting, and living with unique purpose. If you appreciate this podcast, remember to subscribe where possible and share it with a friend. Here's this week's message. So I have a question to begin with today. What is the most unlikely or surprising place you've ever found yourself? What is the most unlikely or surprising place you've ever found yourself? I've told the story of our move to the Milwaukee area to serve our first churches, my wife and I, and staring out the front door of our townhome. I was excited to be there, but also just felt out of place, just pondering the series of events that had led us there. And again, while at my first church, I went to about 1,000 homes in the area to talk to people and invite them to church, the church that I was helping to restart. It was a small church, and the first door I went up to every day was always the most uncomfortable one, but it always got easier after that as well. Sometimes the place you find yourself in can be a bit uncomfortable. It might be a physical place, or it might be a figurative one, like life with a new health diagnosis or a loss of some kind. Maybe you're getting bearings after a perceived failure or a time when something didn't go as expected. Being a disciple or protege of Jesus means we find a way to live in the midst of those new places, whether they're exciting ones and wanted, or whether they seem to test us beyond our limits and be uncomfortable. At the heart of being a disciple is being sent to connect with new people, to work through new challenges, to serve others in a new situation, or maybe to share hope and encouragement with people who need it. Jesus and his disciples were almost constantly on the move, traveling, going town to town, engaging with new people. They did have homes and places of worship, whether synagogues or churches later on, but they didn't become permanently bound, really, to a place. The Spirit was always pushing them out, moving them on. One of the challenges for churches throughout history has been how we overcome this idea of being too anchored and unmoving, physically and spiritually. There's an adventure out there, and in these verses, instead of offering caution and warning about what venturing out might entail, which Jesus talked a bit about last week, this week, his words set a more positive tone. Whoever welcomes you welcomes me. Whoever welcomes a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. Whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these won't lose their reward. Jesus is painting a picture of the positive ways that the disciples can expect to be received as they go out into the surrounding towns and the blessing they will bring upon those that they meet. The question for disciples or proteges of Jesus is how we remain focused outward. How are we actively seeking connections with those around us in the community and beyond to be a blessing? Many churches have imagined hospitality as how we welcome people when they come to church, and of course, that's an important thing. We do want people to experience a warm welcome when they come, but the kind of hospitality Jesus is talking about in this instance is actually reversed. It paints a picture of the church finding ways to go out and connect with people rather than sitting and waiting for people to come. How do we serve and share beyond our walls rather than simply gathering within? The answer isn't necessarily traveling far away to do that. What does it look like for you when you reach out in a spirit of care and grace in your everyday life as a neighbor, a coworker, or in the community? When we do that, grounded in our identity as people of God, that's part of what the mission looks like. Being present. To be a protege of Jesus means to never lose sight of this. As the disciples were going out to meet new people as students of Jesus, it created a situation where they would either be welcomed or rejected. In the ancient world, identity was very closely connected to your family and your community. Showing hospitality to someone meant not only welcoming that individual, but their whole community and what they represented as well. So to welcome a disciple of Jesus would mean an openness to Jesus himself. The disciples, in being sent out, were being asked to serve as connectors, going beyond just existing relationships to create new connections. In his book Tipping Point, Malcolm Gladwell talks about social network theory in a chapter entitled The Law of the Few. He details the function of social connectors and mavens who enable the development of complex networks of people and ideas. Gladwell describes the connector. Connectors are people specialists. They know lots of people and how to form new connections. They help connect people in the world through their relationships. They may help create groups or experiences that allow people to meet each other. As the disciples are being sent, they're meeting new people and forming new connections, even if they are rejected by some and get doors slammed in their proverbial face. The new relationships they do form can become pivotal. When we hear a passage like the one today and from a couple weeks ago, the disciples are sent out to other towns and villages without much for the journey so they can fully engage with the people that they meet. The disciples are like connectors whose sole purpose is to form relationships. But there's another underlying role. The disciples also have a transformational message to share, and that comes from what Gladwell might call the mavens. Mavens are information specialists. Instead of knowing lots of people, they know lots of information. They love information and are naturally curious. They amass information about ideas and things that other people may see as irrelevant or disconnected. But people trust them because they're the ones in the know. And it comes in handy at opportune moments. They love sharing it to educate people. They often inspire connectors and give them a reason to bring people together. In our current society, there are fewer and fewer ways for people to connect across differences. There are forces at work, decades in the making, that make forming community just in general, let alone across diverse groups of people, much harder. Have you ever thought about how Christians are called to be active as connectors and mavens with a message and help people form new connections? This is exactly what Jesus was training his disciples to be in today's gospel from Matthew 10 and over the last few weeks. Imagine what would be possible if we lived into that role individually and together as a congregation, helping people come together and to even come together with a message in mind. So, in the Christian movement, disciples sometimes fill both the role of connector and maven, people person, information person, but there's a different term used for disciples by Jesus here as well. The disciples are referred to by him as prophets. Prophets share a message. A prophet is someone who speaks for God, someone who helps convey truth about the situation that we find ourselves in. They bring information together, maybe a bit like a maven, to use Gladwell's categories. They share inspired insights and truth about what people need to know. The common misconception about prophets is that they predict the future. Occasionally they do that, but they're not necessarily fortune tellers or Nostradamus type people. But prophets do need to be able to share the insights given to them by God as they've been inspired. They're called to be bold even when that may mean the message isn't so welcomed. The reading we heard from Jeremiah earlier was a story of two prophets, Jeremiah and Hananiah. And if you read the full story, the whole chapter, it takes place shortly after Israel has been attacked by Babylon, and not long before many from Israel are sent into exile in Babylon. It's one of the most traumatic events in Israel's history. Hananiah is announcing to the people of Israel that the whole ordeal and threat will be over soon, nothing to worry about. It's a very hopeful and optimistic message. Jeremiah says, in response to what Hananiah says, that would be great. Amen, so be it. But are you so sure? Time will tell whether you're a trustworthy prophet. And as it turns out, Hananiah was just sharing a message everyone wanted to hear, but it ended up not being true. Jeremiah instead later shares a message about hunkering down and making plans for the long haul. His prophecy is actually the message at the heart of our mission resource theme for the year, when Jeremiah tells the people of Israel to seek the welfare or shalom of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its welfare you will find your welfare. So do you hear the difference between those two? One is, just keep doing what you're doing, everything's going to be fine. And the other one is, things are going to be radically changed. Find the blessing in the place where you've been put, even if it's a not so welcome place. Again, his point, rather than bide your time and count the days until you're back in a comfortable and familiar place, find purpose and be a blessing in the place you're in now. Embrace the vulnerability of your current situation and work for good for the strangers that surround you. You'll find blessing yourself in the end. There's always a feeling of vulnerability when you set out on a new mission in an unfamiliar place. I don't know about you, but I don't really like being vulnerable. I like having a plan. I like having things arranged the way I want them. I'd prefer not to live with uncertainty, but over time, I've learned to kind of make friends with it more. We have to gain some comfort level with uncertainty and vulnerability. When we don't plan everything, it leaves us open, perhaps, to the movement of the Spirit. It leaves us open to an encounter, a fresh encounter with our neighbor. Sometimes moments of vulnerability come upon us. There may be times, like Jesus encouraged the disciples to do, when we choose to be vulnerable, to travel lightly, to enter a conversation or a situation with no plans, no preconditions, just our faith and our heart and our hope. But either way, planned or not planned, it can be scary but powerful. Jesus teaches us the importance of hospitality in these uncertain and at times uncomfortable places. In a world where people feel isolated and divided and face adversity every day of their lives, hospitality is a way to extend connections and refuge to others. We can become a part of the solution of offering hospitality wherever we find ourselves, even if it's in a strange place, even as others provide hospitality and welcoming us into their lives. What would happen if you extended hospitality through caring conversation or thoughtful listening to someone new, or that you might not even see common cause with? There's some risk in that. There's also creative potential and power in that. Jesus says, "Whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones, truly I tell you, none of these will lose their reward." To be the ones who offer goodwill, we will find reward in it. But above all, know that Jesus has also welcomed you. You are a creation of God. Beloved, as you encounter the living God, know that God comes to you with grace and compassion, with open arms. And so enter into God's presence with confidence and with joy. Amen. That's this week's message. You don't have to navigate the road ahead alone. You can join with others at All Saints. Visit allsaintsmtka.org for more information. Have a great week.